Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to TWIG 290. We are distilling all the news or as much as we can this week so that you don't have to. We're the three musketeers today, so we're missing Jen and Eric. But with me, I have Phillip Black, game economist at Game Economist Consulting.
Buongiorno.
You're still in Sweden.
Yeah, straight from Sweden.
I got back earlier today, okay? My heart is still in Italy. Well, certainly my stomach.
Oh. And we have Mishka Katkoff, king, founder extraordinaire of Deconstructor of Fun.
Hola, ¿qué tal, amigos?
Oh, whoa, wow. This is every episode. Can you show a little improvement?
Duolingo is just adding words. So I'm technically on a vacation this week. So if anybody's watching the cast, I'm not going to apologize for the tank top. I am on a vacation, so I can wear a tank top. I did shave for this one.
I like how you're like, don't sweat the tank top. Look at, if you can see the beautiful view behind Mishka, it's a perfectly blue sky, beautiful Spanish buildings. And then you've got us, Phil and I, kind of like, well, I'm roasting in Seattle over here in our little offices.
Yeah. I mean, Spain is undefeated when it comes to weather. Let's be honest. So there's that. Yes, Phil. It is.
Not compared to Los Angeles. No one beats LA.
Oh, well, we're talking about Europe because this is honorary European episode. We got two of the Californians out. We got Phil, who's already a European, and Laura, who's an honorary European after living many years in Europe. And now we can do a cast just focusing on things like, now that we don't have the Californians, we can talk about the election. We can talk about the elections in UK. We can talk about the elections in France.
Let's get into French politics.
Geopolitical French politics and UK politics mess.
Boy.
No, I'm just kidding. Let's not talk about any of those things, please.
I prepped by only looking at games this week. I only followed very lightly the BBC in terms of the UK elections.
Yeah, well,
that's good for your health.
Like we did.
Yeah. And sorry, in the hot seat in Seattle, you've got me, Laura Taranto, Senior Director of Product at Big Fish Games. All right. So I think we've been posting a lot on DOF recently. There's been a ton of great content. Mishka, you had an awesome interview with the Solston founders.
It was an awesome interview, but it was really, really late. Like, we recorded that back during Slush in November. It was sort of like an impromptu podcast. I don't know what we were supposed to do. I think I was supposed to record a podcast for their Solston, and then we're like, you know what? Let's record one for DOF. And then I kind of totally forgot about it. And then I was getting some updates from Joe, and I was like, oh wait, we have that podcast, and that's how it came to be. So some of the data that we're talking about, especially about certain games, is actually not true anymore. But other than that, I think everything else kind of stays true. We talk about AI, we talk about launching games, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a fun on-site podcast. But we had other really, really interesting content. We had your piece, Laura, on the Royal Kingdom. I was always like, Royal Match, Royal Kingdom. So you and Amikan wrote a really interesting piece about Dream Games' new game. And then Phil just came with the third 30 days post-launch for Squad Busters, and that's making rounds right now. So a lot of very interesting content for people to read and listen to.
I don't know if anyone read the Squad Busters piece yet, based on some of the comments we're reading. Just to be clear, it is not an assessment on Squad Busters' future. That's up in the air. We don't know that, and that's repeated throughout the piece. What we can assess is Squad Busters' launch, and we can put that into context, and we can talk more about the decision to soft launch, and that's ultimately what it tries to do, is contextualize some of that. What went right, what went wrong, and what do we take away from it? Those are important things that we can make assessments on.
There's no nuances when it comes to anything that you post on social media. It's like people project everything right away. It's like Phil said this game is crap, and Supercell doesn't know what they're doing. I thought it was really interesting. I think it was a really interesting analysis, and just behind the scenes, like the process that went through it. Like, Phil wrote a really long piece, and then he almost changed 70% of that.
That was heartbreaking.
For the next week. That's a lot of dedication. You got some new information. You were like, you know what? I'm just going to change. A lot of feedback from the folks. So that was an interesting piece. And I think overall, when we were talking about Squad Busters, I was kind of like analyzing why I was so wrong with this when we did the podcast. Like, we were projecting this game is going to be a smash hit because we have such an appreciation towards Supercell or any company that is, shows longevity, shows their ability to ship hits, has a super talented crew, et cetera, et cetera. And then even when they do things that don't make any sense, like you're gonna skip soft launch. Are you like, this isn't like, if any other company would do it, we would just laugh. Like, this is crazy. And when Supercell does it, we're like, oh, okay, there must be something to this. This is a new thing that we don't know about. It's like, no, it was a silly decision. And but because we have so much respect towards Supercell, we're just like doubting even our own understanding of what it takes and how to do it. So it's fascinating. It's fascinating.
And we might have a podcast coming too. It was ultimately a marketing story. So we're gonna get some marketers on, and we're gonna get their point of view, whether or not they agree with the piece. So look forward to that in the next coming weeks.
I think I mentioned in the last podcast episode that somebody might reach out from Netflix and give us a little bit of a context to the stuff that we're talking about, and we did get a message from their comms team, and really it was about 3 different pieces that they wanted to clarify. So first part was a lot of unconfirmed data that we've been using. So I was referencing this CNBC article that was actually 2 years old and talked that only 1% of their players were playing those games, and that they've spent $50 million on GTA, which was a rumor that Chris had. But those are not confirmed by Netflix. The only thing that they have confirmed is that their engagement has tripled year over year, and that their investment in games so far is very small compared to their overall content spend, which I believe is $17 billion a year. Phil,
Holy
Laura,
smokescreen,
what's your
Batman.
take on this?
Laura, would you like to go first on this one?
I would channel Cress. I think I've been a little bit more bullish than bearish on Netflix as a whole. What I end up having a lot of questions about is their approach to what games are they making? What audience are they trying to make those games for? Are they taking the right games, right IPs, and putting them together to attract an audience? So I think I'm just going to quote Mishka's very in-depth analysis. I think the point that stuck with me, we want to have a game on Netflix for every member, something for everyone, hence the broad portfolio. Totally understand that, agree with that. I think my question to them is, are they picking the right mix of things? Are they creating audiences, or they're basically creating games for zero audience? And I think that's where I have a question mark. Interactive fiction, great. I think that's perfect. I think that will cover it. Games for kids, perfect. They have it. They have a lot of families. I'm sure most of their audience is families. They have a lot of content for children. It makes sense that they'd want games for that. But then I look at some of their other choices. I think some of the Stranger Things games have been a question mark in my head, because I don't think that's necessarily an audience mashup for some of the Stranger Things games. That's where I give them a question mark. No doubt, talented people, smart people, but are they approaching it in a way that's a little bit maybe more methodical?
And I would just add, like, all of the PR fluff that was just mentioned in terms of data is complete nonsense. Like, engagement is up, tripled year over year. Yeah, well, like when, you've got 3 people playing Netflix games and you add 10 more people, like, oh yeah, look at everything tripled from a low base. And of course, like, the data is unconfirmed. Who would want to confirm like where Netflix games is, which is not in a good place? This is smokescreen stuff, but if they want to put out real numbers, prove us wrong. And I think one of the things that people are starting to point out is that Netflix hasn't done great at distribution of their games. And I think that's completely fair. There was a great interview in mobilegamer.biz with Leanne, who is the head of external games at Netflix, where she talks about ideas like having a QR code at the end of a TV show that you'd be able to take a snapshot of, and that would take you to the App Store where you could download the game. Those are the things that they should have been doing years ago and are still not implemented. And this is just the confusion mark, is that they're years into this and we still haven't seen the basic things played out. It turns out an Emily in Paris game is coming, but it's like Netflix story stuff again. It isn't Match. Like, a lot of the stuff that is obvious hasn't been tried yet, and that's the frustration. So let's see.
Yeah. Part of the correction was also, not the correction, but the reach out was also the point that we keep mentioning. Not only we, I mean, Suford pointed out this really clearly as well, that Netflix games lack strategy. But Netflix games told us through their communication that what they've said from the beginning was games are meant to be an added value for Netflix membership, intentionally not monetized through ads or in-app purchases. They also mentioned that number 2 is we want to have a game on Netflix for every member, something for everyone. Hence, they have that broad portfolio. And number 3 was they want these games to be on all devices where Netflix is. So that means that they will be on TV And that wasn't a pivot because mobile wasn't doing well, which is sort of what was insinuated in the piece. So in short, the goal is adding value to Netflix membership, and they will do this by offering games without ads and purchases, building a large portfolio of variety, including games based on their series, films, and by being in all places where you have Netflix. Now, they refer this as a strategy, and I kind of, we pointed out nicely that those are goals, and they were like, no, this is a strategy. And I've actually studied business strategy at University of Manchester. So shout out to England that is playing today, and shout out to Man City. And I kind of go back to, to 300 years ago when I was studying business strategy. And the way I understand business strategy, or a good business strategy, is that it's a plan that outlines how a company will achieve its goals and improve its competitive position in the market. And it's comprised of components like market analysis, who are your customers, who are your competitors, the unique value of the business offering to its customers that differentiates your products and services from the competitors. It's your key strengths and capabilities that give the business a competitive edge, measurable strategic goals and objectives, financial models, operational plans, marketing plans, performance metrics, risk management, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And when you don't have a business strategy and you only have goals, we want to be number one, you end up with individuals doing seemingly random stuff that often is loosely tied to the goals that you've set, but there's no how you're going to do it. So still, I would argue that we don't understand the business strategy of Netflix games. They're not bad games, but how does this make sense? What do you think, Laura?
I completely agree. What comes to mind is, like, I know Crest doesn't necessarily agree with the Apple Arcade, like, as a whole. However, what I do like about what they did, I think a little bit they were hodgepodging it to begin with too, seeing what worked. And then they decided, I'm not saying I necessarily agree or disagree with this, but they said, we're going to focus on family-friendly games. And they started doing investments in, what was it? They started like leaning into Hello Kitty adventures. Is it the best strategy? Maybe, maybe not, but I do see that as a little bit more focused. So they want to be, I'm sure they have a similar goal, kind of like Netflix, but at least they picked maybe what their strongest demographic was going to be and decided we're going to look for and make specific games to target that audience. And then what's helpful that you can actually, like what you said, it's measurable. Did we achieve it? Did we not? Do we pivot from there? Do we not? Yeah. So.
Yeah. And with these measurable goals that are part of strategy, like I referred to that just in the sense that when we hear interviews and when we talk to people from Netflix games who are actually creating content and working on it, it's or even Leanne's interview, it's always about like, oh, we get to do fun stuff that people really enjoy. Those are not measurable goals per se. There's no star ratings or anything. It's like, when we're making games, we have certain ROIs that we're trying to hit with. So there was other points where they were kind of like not very happy of me comparing Netflix games to Apple Arcade. I mean, it's not quite apples to oranges in a way, but it is a package. Like Apple Arcade on its own is arguably a not successful product, but Apple Arcade as a part of Apple One is an added value. And so Netflix games as a part of Netflix subscription is an added value. But if we're getting into this game of like, what is an added value and what should Netflix or Apple, focus on? Like Apple One, why it's so awesome is not maybe the Apple TV or the Apple Arcade or the combination of those. It's the memory that it's the cloud that you get from that. And if Netflix really wants to play the who gets to give the most value, they should really open up a cloud, let me put in my photos and videos and my, shows and share them between family members. Like that's a valuable thing. Then I'm definitely not canceling the subscription ever because I have 100 gigs uploaded into Netflix cloud. Anyways. And then the last point was just about GTA stuff. And I think this was the most accurate. This is where I failed. When I was looking at the GTA games and there was a rumor that they paid 50 million from it. Like, we don't know about that. That was just only a rumor. It's actually the definitive edition. And when I was talking about this, I was talking that there used to be already these same games and Netflix kind of relaunched them. Well, apparently they relaunched the definitive editions that came in at the same time with $20 per pop. So when they were launched, you could get them for free with Netflix subscription, or you could pay $20 up per game to download these games. So essentially, the way Netflix games saw it is that every Netflix member got a $60 value included with their membership. It's like, okay, well, I guess you can count that out.
No, that's PR math.
I know. That's of course that is like not everybody. It's like if you put in a movie that I will definitely not watch, you can't say that now you gave me like because this movie was so expensive that you're never gonna watch. You got just like $50 in your Netflix subscriptions. Like it doesn't work that way. But anyway, it's a fair point. I didn't notice there was a remastered version, so I kind of went back and I was looking at how this Rockstar's GTA Definitive Edition did. And on consoles, the collection has sold more than 21 million units across digital and physical channels, and it was $60 per piece. So that's what 1.2 billion from those old games. Wow. And on mobile, I don't know why I was only able to find the Vice City Definitive Edition in terms of revenues for both Apple and Google and all platforms. Like everybody else was showing kind of like weird revenue numbers. But just on one of these games that was $20 a pop, that generated 27 million in net revenues, according to Sensor Tower, just selling this game for $20. So Netflix got 65 million installs from those three games. And come to think of it, I think Take-Two should have just sold directly on mobile. Like they would have probably made more money than going through Netflix. But I guess in this case, they got both, right? But like in the end, like if Take-Two would have just launched this without Netflix, they would have probably made at least 60 to 70 million, right? On mobile. Am I in the ballpark, Phil?
I don't know. Well, for a paid game, I mean, give me a break. No,
Well, no, like Vice City alone, Definitive Edition, so that you can buy one of these. You don't buy them as a bundle, you buy them as a piece. Each of them costs $20. And so Vice City alone, Definitive Edition, generate 27 million in net revenues as a $20 game.
So you're saying that if the developer sold
Take-Two.
directly, they could have then just, been
Made more
rolling in
money.
cash. Yeah.
Netflix way overpaid for this. Take-Two got a risk-free paycheck, and I'm sure this is just a lockout. Like they can still sell it.
Essentially a minimum guarantee.
Yeah, they can still sell it on the
it.
App Store. Like this is great. You get to double dip. You get to go on a Netflix willing to overpay to establish something, and you get to sell it. I mean, this is the dream.
And you can launch this game on the same day with Netflix putting it on subscription. You can also launch it and get your direct revenue from that. It was a weird deal. But anyway, I'm happy that Netflix is happy with this deal. I guess it makes the service much more valuable. So, I wanted to do one correction. So that was Netflix correction, really long, but I wanted to do one more correction, actually two more. So one was the Daybreak game that we talked about originally. They were originally Sony Online Entertainment and did H1Z1, not DayZ, as I mentioned. And they're also not part of Embracer, but part of EG7. And we almost forgot about that consolidator from Sweden. And then Singularity 6 slightly got bought from Micenut. So this is from undisclosed Slack, Deconstructor Fund, Slack channel member. And I'm quoting, any corp dev or an investment banker will tell you that the CEO of Daybreak is notorious for putting up offers around 100K for M&A transactions that end up selling for tens of millions. So apparently the deal size was probably pretty small. And then my second correction was the Bandai Namco Mobiles Bugbuster, so that Spanish studio from Barcelona. So I talked about that their game soft launched and it had 3.3 stars after 4 years of development. I don't know if they spent 4 years on this particular game, but the studio has been live for 4 years. And to be clear, I've made an entire career of building games that are killed in soft launch. So I wasn't saying that, hey, you launched a game that is not that great in soft launch. Trust me, been there, done that many times. And no matter how hard you try, it's the saddest thing to build something that never goes, globally live. I was mentioning things like, soccer tournaments and normal length work days with nice lunches and so forth, not to make fun of it, but more to say that the original thesis, the way I understand a 4-day work week, was that if you work 4 days a week, they will say that we are more focused because we have a shorter week. We work longer days because we're a shorter week. And I just mentioned these things that that are happening in the studio that they actually work normally. Just work 4 days, not 5 days. And my point was not about the talent, because I know that this studio has super good people. It was more about the implication of the 4-day work week. And I understand why they had originally the 4-day work week, because the studio was set up in 2020, and that was the peak time of talent wars. Even though they had the superb location of Barcelona, even though they had the reputable brand of Bandai Namco, you kind of have to take a step more, and they probably weren't able to pay those outrageous salaries that some of these companies were paying at this time. So they came up with like, hey, how about we implement this 4-day work week? And that's a major benefit for many very talented people. And that resonated really well. And they were able to build a super talented studio. But my point really is that strategy, in my opinion, is outdated in today's time of profitability and efficiency. And I'm not saying that if they would work 6 days a week, it will be a successful game. I'm just saying that when you work 4 days a week and your rivals work much more, like we are in constant communication with the Turks, the Israelis, the Vietnamese, even the Americans, they all are outworking Europeans who work 5 days a week. And now you're going to limit yourself to 4 days a week. It's just tough to have this strategy. And we can kind of see that in the result. It's not that you will do better games if you work less. I think you have to work at least as much as your rivals.
Spoken like a man on vacation in Spain.
Yes.
I know, right?
For a month.
Like, listen, for a month, listen, I'm not in development, but what I would say is that when in development, it's the toughest thing. It's like, especially when your game hits that skid during the soft launch and you're trying to solve the problem. I'm sure that the team at Supercell working on Squad Busters, they're like, oh shit, our launch didn't go so well. Maybe we should go into 4-day work week and really solve this problem. It's like, most likely they're going to, work super hard and long hours to turn around this game. And you kind of have to throw a lot of work on it to make it happen. So again, I'm not using myself as an example or anything. I'm just saying I understand the strategy, and I don't really believe that a 4-day work week is the optimal solution or the winning strategy in today's. I understand why it was in 2020, 2021, maybe 2022 early, but not today. That was my main point. The talent, the location, the Bandai Namco team, they're all great.
As an honorary European, I like to think of quality of work versus quantity of work. And if you have a launch and it's not going well, cutting your work week down to 4 days, probably not the right move. But if you're in a little bit more of a stable content generating, you're making live ops, you're making new content for your game, I would 100% consider it, just because I think that extra day promotes rest, spending time with your friends and family, recharging. So you come to work for those 4 days with a fresher, more relaxed mind, which I personally think generates better, higher quality work. My 2 cents. But again, I agree that it is circumstantial. It entirely depends on how your studio works, what your studio is doing. But I think I drank too much of the European Kool-Aid when I lived there. And I firmly believe in a very good work-life balance for generating better quality work.
I mean, I agree on work-life balance part, just to be clear. So I remember when I moved back from US to Europe, there was a culture shock of how little the people worked and how proud they were to work so little. Like, meaning that you would come to work at around between 9 and 10, and there was a coffee breaks and this and that, and kind of a slow start, that was a scrum, et cetera, et cetera. And then the whole studio would be empty at 4 p.m. like crickets. And so I'm not saying that if you work long hours, that is the key to success. But I'm also saying that it's not the key success if you work short hours. And there's a balance in between the both. Like, you can work too little and not get anything done. And you can work too much where you just burn out. And I've worked with the Chinese companies and the 996s. It's just the employee turnover is absolutely insane. We're talking about 50% year over year employee turnover because people burn out. Of course, that's not unsustainable. That makes no sense. But if we say that 40 hours is the amount of hours you're expected your employees to work in a week, I think you have to keep to that. If you cram it into 4 days, like these companies are saying, that could work. But then again, in live ops and in other phases, like the world works really 5 days a week, and it's kind of hard to play around with the 4.
Step into the future of game monetization with Xsolla, the premier partner for game developers seeking to expand their reach and revenue. Xsolla provides a robust suite of tools designed to enhance user acquisition, manage subscriptions, and streamline payment solutions worldwide. Unlock new markets and maximize profitability through their customized, secure payment architecture and dedicated support team. Xsolla, powering game developers to achieve global success.
This podcast is brought to you by AppsFlyer. In today's digital world, understanding your app's journey from discovery to download is more than just insightful, it's essential. Enter AppsFlyer, the leader in mobile attribution and marketing analytics that allows you to measure the full potential of your marketing efforts, making every ad dollar work smarter. With AppsFlyer, that's your new reality. Dive deep into data-driven insights that reveal exactly where your users come from and how they'll interact with your app. AppsFlyer, where your app's potential meets performance.
I'm going to move to quick hits, and we're going to discuss two American companies that are definitely not working 4 days a week. There was an $8 billion merger of Skydance and Paramount that will see the former entity take control of the combined group. And the reason I put this in is because it is slightly relevant to the game industry, as Skydance is developing a pair of big budget Marvel and Star Wars games. And they're going to today promoted its ability to help Paramount make significant entrees into new entertainment verticals. Then we have the Apple tax. So, in effect from July 1st, Apple will pay their 30% fee to advertisers who boost posts, so effectively ads, on Facebook and Instagram apps on iOS. So this is effectively saying that if you are a small business or an influencer and you want to boost your post for visibility, Apple's going to be taking a 30% cut of that. And Meta on their blog, in response to this, has been pushing people to be, if you're going to be doing boost posts, use their desktop app to skirt the fee. Hooey. All right. Those are it for markets, investments, and M&A. We have a lot of news here.
Yeah, a lot of investment news going on here. So first one from friends from Quali. John pinged me about this, so let's give John a shout out. So Quali makes a minority investment into Devolver Digital. And Devolver Digital is an indie publisher in the UK stock exchange. So as of today, Quali holds 3.6% share of the business. The investment into Devolver fits with Quali's broader growth strategy to expand beyond its heritage in hyper-casual mobile gaming to achieve more balanced growth. The minority investment in Devolver increases Quali's exposure to PC console segment, one of its target verticals. Quali's own entry into PC console market is relatively new, with its latest launch, RoboBeat, rated overwhelmingly positive on Steam, receiving 97% positive reviews, and Quali has over 10 promising PC console games in the pipeline. So clearly, Quali moving away from its roots and diversifying its portfolio, and not only in terms of like other developers going from hyper casual to hybrid casual, but seems like they're going into all directions. There was also news of them opening up a publishing cooperation in MENA, in Saudi Arabia, focusing on different growth markets in that sense. So platform and geographic diversification going on. Other news, Japan-based video game developer and publisher Capcom has acquired 66% share of Taiwan-based outsourcing tech company Minimum Studios for an undisclosed price. This acquisition is part of Capcom's strategy of selling 100 million game copies annually, so buying more manpower. There was a Finland-based UGC game development platform called BitMagic that has raised $4 million in seed funding round. The funds will enhance the development of the company's no-code game development platform, a generative AI to transform textual description into fully interactive multiplayer 3D games. Along with funding announcement, the company disclosed that its platform is now freely accessible to the public via Steam playtest. We're going to talk more about AI in our Nintendo news, so I'm not going to comment on this more. But
congratulations to Finland too, by the way. I mean, I talk about Hype a lot, which is a game platform I think everyone should be keeping track of, which is more UGC hyper casual stuff on mobile. This looks more 3D and PC based. But one of the things that Joachim from Elite Game Developers wrote a long time ago, I think we covered here, was just Finland struggling to grow. Maybe UGC is the kind of the next acclimation effect. If they can get BitMagic and Hype going, maybe this is the next chapter in Finland growth. We'll see.
Yeah, Hype is, it's been hyped up quite a lot. I remember first trying their game that was maybe like almost already 3 years ago, and they're still kind of like, figuring things out. So I'm a little bit less bullish on it. I was super bullish in the beginning. I was like, oh my God, this is like TikTok of making games. And since then, it's been years and they've raised more funding. They've grown the team. So they're kind of like operating like a bigger company right now. But there's still no product out.
It is real. It is a fantastic product.
Used it.
It's real. It's out there. This team does deliver. And the other thing I would note is that Roblox was nothing for 10 years. It was nothing. It was taking VC round after VC round, had zero traction. Building platforms takes a lot of time, particularly with UGC. It takes time to build assets. It takes time to get the creator tools right. It takes time to get like the symbolic relationship between players, wallets, and monetization. It's very hard to get this flywheel going. It takes a lot of capital too, but I think it perfectly aligns with VC style outcomes.
Yeah, because it's like nothing or huge.
Yep.
That makes sense. All right. Well, talking about huge, San Francisco-based Volley raises $55 million in Series C. Apparently, there's still game development in the city. So Volley games are built on a proprietary stack integrating 4 rapidly evolving AI technologies: speech recognition, natural language processing, LLM-powered content generation, and speech synthesis. It was founded in 2018. Popular Volley games include Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune, 20 Questions, and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. These sounds very familiar. The games are available on smart speakers like Alexa, Fire, Roku, and mobile devices. So again, this is Lightspeed Steel. So they have Moritz has been on this one. So I trust it makes sense. But when I hear that we're talking, all this AI talk, but in the end, these are games on Alexa.
I would love to hear Moritz talk more about what he sees as the thesis in voice-based games. How does there's so many question marks. That doesn't mean there aren't reasonable answers. Doesn't mean there isn't a strategy there, but I would love to understand more what he sees as the thesis here.
Yeah.
So the Alexa games are not bad. You can play them while cooking. And I believe I played the Alexa one where it's like guess the name of the song and you go head to head with someone else. It was like guess the song. If you want more songs, buy additional content packs.
Via voice?
The game was via voice. I'm sure you have to buy the content packs. Like it'd be easier on iOS. Or actually Alexa has a touch screen.
You immediately got a funnel there that you got to manage. Yeah. That just says drop off to me. Like that's some of the stuff that I struggle with seeing on how this is going to be solved.
Maybe it's improved. This is a while ago.
Maybe.
They are kind of fun.
Somebody said once the podcasts don't make any sense, and look at that. Actually, they do. So we don't know. But on the face value, this doesn't make any sense. And it might be the biggest thing ever. So what do we know? But this one doesn't make sense. And that is US-based Web3 games company Azure Games has raised $32.6 million in funding round from undisclosed investors. So let's get deep into the crazy zone here. So their total funding at the moment is $57.6 million. A16Z has led previous 2 rounds, 10 million in 2022. So this is not like an old company. 2022, 10. Then 2023 rolls around, they're giving another 15. And now 2024, they're giving, they just double up every year. Anyways, I would really understand, nevertheless, why this investment was made.
It's very simple. I can tell you it right now. It's because it's the team behind Capital Games, which is the ones that made Star Wars of Galaxy. I mean, that's it.
No. That is how you make maybe the 2 previous rounds of investments, which is already putting it at 25 million. But now 2 years later, they need more money. So they spent, 23 million? Well, let's say they spent 20 million in 2 years as a startup. That sounds like an insanely high burn rate. I checked out on LinkedIn. It associates 71 people to them on LinkedIn, but part of them are investors. But let's say they have anywhere between, 50 to 60 employees. And of course, this is a Web3 game. That's why I'm covering this. And whenever I just read this, I feel like somebody's getting bamboozled. And I don't think it's the creators or the holders of whatever NFT is being made. I think it's those who are putting money into this. I could be, most likely I'm totally wrong, but nevertheless, $57.6 million. And you're just, pouring more money because they have that team, but there's still no product out. There's still no traction. It sounds crazy. Well, let's talk about bamboozling one more thing. Infinite Reality, the company working on metaverse-like technologies, has raised $350 million to acquire a Roblox game developer, Landvault, for $450 million. The deal shows financial velocity of Infinite Reality and the financial velocity that they've gathered, so that their value is $5.1 billion, and the company focused on immersive platform and enterprise service technologies. So far this year, New York-based Infinite Reality has spent more than $800 million in stock on previous acquisitions, including the purchase of Drone Racing League, $250 million, Ethereal Engine for $75 million, Action Phase for $10 million, and Stakes for $8 million. So Infinite Reality is on a shopping spree, building the full-on metaverse. Yeah, I guess the full-on metaverse.
I do want to say, I don't know if describing Land Vault as a Roblox developer is quite appropriate here, because $450 million for a Roblox developer, even if it's not in cash, even if it's in, performance pass, whatever it may be, that'd be insane. That'd be absolutely nuts. They have a technology play. They made Roblox games beforehand, but their technology play, they have much broader ambitions. Roblox, I think, is just a testing platform for the broader technology ambitions.
That's how I understood. Land Vault started as a tech platform, and then they pivoted or started making Roblox games, and then they were acquired. So there is that technology, because it's not, I think the company was started in 2018. Nevertheless, $450 million. It is an interestingly high
That's
acquisition.
a lot of money, and
It's a lot of money.
it's not
insane.
cash. It's not cash. I mean, that's clearly a vanity number similar to the Voodoo acquisition, but still, even that for this company is crazy. However, the real breakdown was.
Phil, they raised $350 million. So
Well,
let's say
it's
that
probably just on the balance sheet
earnout
then.
is $100 million.
Well, they could just be buying the balance sheet too.
Could be a lot of money. So, congratulations to Land Vault and Infinite Reality with a $5 billion valuation. So I guess they're doing a lot of things right. I hope this valuation holds and grows. That's it.
All right, putting on my Crest hat. Layoffs, employments, and closures. Coming in with the good news, courtesy of Neil Long from mobilegamer.biz. Monopoly Go creator Scopely has appointed Mike Sievers as its new senior vice president of technology, and he's worked in similar positions at Yuga Labs, Epic Games, and Riot Games. And then Tactile Games has hired Jacob Kruger as their CMO. He came from Fun Plus, and from what I remember, they've been looking to fill this role for a while. So congrats to Jacob and Tactile.
This podcast is brought to you by Heroic Labs. You've heard of Heroic Labs by now, and we keep talking about them because in today's mature market, you need every edge to be successful. Rather than spending those precious company dollars on building game tech, focus on building your game and shipping it. Get it into your players' hands faster and grow your community. Heroic Labs is a battle-tested partner and friend of the podcast. Their tech enables you to be flexible, creative, and scale for success. Heroic Labs has your tech stack covered. Whether you're looking for a world-class back-end server, an amazing game development framework, fantastic live ops tooling, or reliable mass scalability, Heroic Labs has solutions for all of these challenges. It's not just us at Deconstructor of Fun praising Heroic Labs. The company works with some of the world's biggest publishers on the most beloved games. Focus on your game, save a lot of money, and avoid tech risks with Heroic Labs.
This podcast is brought to you by Data AI. Now, you're asking, didn't they get acquired by Sensor Tower? They did, and that's awesome. Here's why. Whether you loved using Data.ai or Sensor Tower, the combined company will offer customers even stronger and more detailed insights on the full digital customer journey. Exciting times lie ahead as Sensor Tower and Data AI join forces. Go to data.ai or sensortower.com and get on board with undeniably the best data partner in the business. Now, back to the episode.
Let's talk about some games. And the first game we should talk about is something that you had picked up, Laura. And we're going to be talking about a lot today. Toon Blast's revenue has been seeing an uptick recently.
So I had a little look, and my first question is always like, why? What are they doing? Because this game has been out for 6 years now, and looking at Game Refinery, new live ops were added. So they basically added something called Dragon's Treasure, which is social win streak. It's the same thing as Royal Matches, Lava Quest style event that released kind of end of December. So it matches when we started to see that. And then what they've also been doing, it looks like it's mostly content updates and live ops. And then they also took, if you play Gossip Harbor, They have Coconut's Treasure with a cat. You make merges and the cat rises, and that's how you get prizes. It's basically a reward progression. They've implemented that as well. So my guess is it's content and new live ops.
I mean, this is a wild increase, Laura. This is almost a doubling of revenue since it looks like last July. Looks like probably the end of the year, probably October, September 2023. They start to see just this huge increase. And they've maintained it ever since, going from, it looks like, around $400,000 a day to around $700,000 a day. I mean, wow. And there hasn't been a corresponding increase in downloads either. So it doesn't look like there's a huge UA push either. This is straight cash money, baby.
They had like a couple modest spikes in downloads, but nothing that suggested a major UA campaign. If any, open this up. If anyone knows why, if it's not the content, the live ops, or anything else they've been adding, please let us know. I'm very curious.
Next thing on the docket has been the launch of a Zenless Zone Zero, which is affectionately labeled ZZZ. And it looks like this one might be put out to pasture. Let's see. It's been 3 days since its launch. We know that downloads have crossed 50 million. That has been reported by Hoyoverse, which is really interesting because it also gives us a benchmark to look at how Sensor Tower isn't able to cover a lot of Chinese numbers. So we'll be able to do a deeper analysis on this one. We need probably another week. But so far, the returns do not look great in terms of revenue when we comp it against both Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact, at least just on mobile. And remember, these are multi-platform releases. It looks pretty abysmal. It looks like it's doing about a third of where Genshin was. And it looks like it's 30 to 40% down from where Genshin launched. And it looks like it's probably doing a fourth of where Honkai Star Rail was when it launched. So not a great outcome. And again, like, this kind of shows that pre-registration numbers are basically worthless. You can't really rely on them. It looks like it's becoming a vanity metric. I mean, 50 million downloads did not translate to a lot of active users, and it doesn't look like it translated to a lot of revenue either. I mean, the only star mark I think you can put here is that, this is an action RPG. Maybe this plays better on console. Maybe we're seeing more console revenue here, but I don't know. That sounds like a grab at straws here.
Okay, so I played a little bit of it. I can't comment. I'm still too early, and I got very distracted by the next game we're going to mention. I thought it played well. First impressions, it played well. I made Mark play it. He liked it. I do think, I'm with you. Let's give it another week or two, and then we can dig more into it and compare the console versions to the mobile versions. But first impressions were not bad.
And we got to talk about cannibalization with these franchises as well. I mean, that's always been the narrative. I'm a little bit more skeptical, but I'm sure Eric will have a interesting point of view here.
I think Eric's going to say cannibalization, but let's see.
Next up, Hexa Sort. I don't know. Is this the lore episode?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Cress is gone. So I'm like throwing mice nuts and puzzle games in this left and right. So you know how I heard about this game? My friend's daughter was like, Laura, you're in games, right? I said, yeah. She's like, I've been playing this game nonstop. And I downloaded it. I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. I don't really like, hybrid, hyper casual inspired games that are now hybrid casual ads heavy are not my jam. I thought I was going to enjoy Toon Blast more. I actually couldn't put this game down. And so I had a quick look. I've never watched so many ads before, and I was shocked at how I thought it was doing quite well for a mixed monetization model. So far, the game's been live maybe 7-8 months. They've made $8 million in revenue in Western countries. Last June was a very big month at 1.3 million. So it's about just under 100K a day in IAP. And then the estimated DAO is about 350,000. Felix from 2.5 Gamers was kind enough to give an estimation of what their ad mon would be. Because again, this game has ads everywhere. They have interstitial, they have banner, static banner, they have rewarded video. My napkin math, I was like, maybe 50% of total revenue. But his more sophisticated formula clocked it at closer to 65%. So the estimation was they're earning about 166,000 per day in in-app ads on top of the just under 100K per day in IAP. Honestly, I don't know if I could say the game is very enticing. I think the levels are so well designed. I think the ad integration complements it. It's a little aggressive, but it does very well. It's very well thought out in terms of putting ads for things you need in level. Basically, they've done it for the EGP, the endgame purchase equivalent, extra board space, daily rewards. I could not put this game down. I was Yeah, I really liked it.
So I've been playing this game ever since Istanbul. And I remember I got introduced to a bunch of these. So we were taking a long and dangerous ride as every car drive in Istanbul is. It's a life or death. And I was sitting with a bunch of developers out of Cyprus. And there were a lot of casual developers. And they introduced me to a bunch of these games. And they were talking about these puzzle hybrid casual games. And Hexa Sort was one of them. So I downloaded several. And Hexa Sort is the type of a game that I had played and talked to people and gave it to people for them to try to play it, and everybody has loved it. Like everybody who tries it, not everybody, but I would say 90% of the people who try it are absolutely in love. It's so fun type of a puzzle game. And what I think that in terms of the ad monetization, the really cool piece is like they would block an area. This is not a match 3 game, but basically they would cover a portion of that playable area that you can unlock by watching an ad. So it makes your likelihood to complete a level much higher. Essentially, you have to watch the ad, and it makes you feel so good. And basically, you start a level and you watch like 3 video ads, and then you can just, give it a proper go, because before that, you're kind of like at a deficit. So as Laura said, I've never watched more ads than playing this game. It's thoroughly enjoyable. I play it on planes. I play it off planes. Well-designed levels, kind of like a new mechanic. I like how the tiles kind of, jump automatically. I like that there's that speed element of like almost like Puzzles and Dragons approach. Like if you're fast enough at placing stuff, you're actually going to perform better. So there's that skill element in terms of the speed of how quickly you drop things on the playable area. And then there's the puzzle element of like you thinking ahead of where should I put what. Even talking about this game makes me want to play this game.
Yeah,
That's
me
how
too.
good this game is.
So what I don't understand is like the reason I love hyper casual, and I've talked about it beforehand, is because it tests mechanics so quickly, and you get these sorting mechanics that you're talking about. I mean, there are a lot of hyper casual games that have used these type of sorting mechanics that are in this game, but this one looks like it's pretty stable. It looks like it might be able to do 100 million in the year. Let's see if it can maintain where it is. What I don't understand is why we aren't seeing some of the bigger players try to shit out these mechanics and use a lot of their UA expertise and kind of productionalize some of this. Like, where is King? Where is Playrix? Why aren't we seeing them take these ideas, which have kind of been tested for them, and kind of take them to a new scale? Like, I keep waiting for these games to have a bigger breakthrough, and it never seems to happen. And I'm confused about why that hasn't happened.
King is. I covered this maybe a couple months ago now. What they did was they created kind of a skeleton for a meta, and then they started testing different mechanics. So they definitely tested a Candy Crush IP themed sorting triple match and a blast.
They did.
So,
okay.
Yes, they did. They did. Playrix I have not seen.
I mean, that's kind of where hybrid is supposed to be, right? It's templating a meta and then kind of dragging and dropping different core experiences into it. I'm surprised I haven't seen a bigger player take a swing at this. And I'm also surprised that these type of games haven't been able to sustain for longer periods of time. Like the match economy is so straightforward, as you guys have pointed out. Like we know what the playbook is for monetization. And more importantly, like we know what the playbook is for content. Like you make more levels, you do more level design, you sell boosters. Like on Game Economist Cast, I call this the greatest game economy of all time. Like it's been going on for 10 years. I'm just surprised that these games haven't broken through into, the upper echelon of 200, 300, 500 million a year.
I think, Phil, you're kind of comparing two very different business models. It's almost like comparing like cheap airlines and expensive airlines. And you're like, why can't the expensive airlines, the established, do exactly what Southwest or Ryanair are doing? They're just very different model and built differently. And so when it comes to these hybrid casual puzzle games, if you will, they are actually copying each other. So Hexa Sort was inspired by Block Blast. That was a Chinese studio that made it. They were raking in like $500,000 a day with ads and in-app purchases, and that was kind of like the first stab at these puzzles. And of course, AppLovin and others jumped in on this puzzle core that this is a new thing that we can start exploiting. And because they have that hyper casual background, that ability to work with multiple studios, take multiple bets, move really, really fast, test marketability, find the low CPIs, monetize through ads. They have such a different way of making games, monetizing them and growing them, that the incumbents that are working in the in-app purchase space are just not equipped and should not be competing against these ones. They have just a very, very different ways of operating. But these hybrid casuals are copying each other left and right.
I agree. I can't imagine like these games. They're you need a lot of them because most of them are going to fail. And I can't imagine like if you're of a more established company, you're thinking, is my investment going to go into my game that's already making a lot of money, and that team could do X, Y, and Z feature that on a very big revenue number could generate uplift that will probably generate more than a new game. So they have to want to do it. And then from selfishly, I can't imagine having like 15 ideas that I want to test quickly and having to go through any sort of heavy greenlight process for it. Like,
yeah,
that's a lot of slides.
Exactly. Like Laura is like, this is what I mean by the ways of operating. Like, think about it. Like, you have to get your executives. Like, do we want to do this? And who in the team wants to do it? And then you're at Voodoo and you work with 100 studios, literally 100 studios. You're like, all right, so let's get these 5 to crank up a prototype a week or every second week, and we're gonna test them and we're gonna go through it. Like, they're gonna go for the puzzle genre, and every week we're gonna get prototypes that we can test. It's a different business model.
It's a different business
That's why.
model.
Some news out of Pocket Gamer Biz. Rainbow Six Mobile Siege is on pause. This has been in soft launch for 6 months. I'm kind of bummed to see this. You know, ever since the failure of really Farlight 84, I think from Lilith Games to really scale, has some question marks in the mobile first-person shooter market. I also heard that Valorant Mobile, which I thought was canceled, looks like it still has some heartbeats in China. So let's see if that one can make it out the door. Some news from My.Games. War Robots has blast past $900 million. It is celebrating its 10th anniversary. When this game came out, I was a doubter. You know, this was at the advent of a lot of 3D games on mobile with those dual analog sticks, and I really didn't think they would work. I mean, at the beginning of the App Store, we had a bunch of these ports, and it was, you know, hey, let's make mobile first experiences. But this is one of the first ones that really took off. And the incredible part, we're looking at the revenue graph right now, is that this thing consistently makes $6 million a year. And it's been doing that since 2018. I mean, that level of consistency is breathtaking.
It's this is a super interesting game because it kind of came like it's World of Tanks, but with a much more global appeal of mechs, if you will. Tanks are very popular in Eastern Europe mainly.
It's Mech Warrior. It's the Mech Warrior IP that they didn't move fast enough to do something like this.
There's some small things like when you compare it to the Wargaming's economy of that, like small additions that they did is very interesting. Like, for example, you go into a battle with 3 mechs, so you have to choose your roster, and like when one dies, you take another.
Yep.
In World of Tanks, when your tank explodes, that's it. You can just now watch or just get the hell out of the game. So like these small iterations, small additions that make this game better monetizing. As I said, the appeal is different. And when I had these guys on a podcast when they crossed 500 million, it was very interesting to hear how when they went into a soft launch, they saw absolute dog shit numbers. Like, we're talking about like day one, 18%, like just shut it down. And their whole approach was like, wait a minute, let's analyze the data. And they saw that there's a small segment that really likes this game and sticks. And so they just kind of like, you know, identified who is really our player. And through that soft launch was able to pinpoint and acquire more of those type of users. And that kind of showed them the path of where they should be going and really focusing on their players rather than everybody. So interesting story, and seems like they're continuing, and they have been doing now a lot of spin-offs for this. So when My Games was last time on the podcast, they were talking about the AAA PC console version, or was it just a console version that came out? And then they also did sort of like a Brawl Stars version of Mech Warriors for a little bit of a younger audience with these ones. Nothing has really stuck quite like this. So it's interesting how they're gonna continue the growth, whether they want to do like a relaunch with this with better graphics or so forth. So but yeah, looks like a forever franchise.
Even more shocking is this launched a whole genre. I mean, there's a whole genre of war robot battle games now. I think Plarium has one of these as well. Like there's actually a couple of like now war robot games. They really found something here.
Yeah, vehicular shooters.
We have an update from the first Descendant. This is a game that is from Korean-based publisher Nexon. It has been doing fairly well on Steam. I ended up, checking in with it last week. It had just launched. It looks like it's actually maintaining its PSU, which is incredible to see. And when you comp it against the finals and multiverses, which is something that Adam Telfer suggests, this is what I'm be doing to measure a lot of drop-offs is comp it to these two titles. Not only are the heights of this game higher in terms of PSU, but the drop-off has not taken a foot yet. So it looks like this one is actually growing a little bit. They're stacking some DAU together. That to me is a signal to really take a look at this game. So next week, we're going to have a little bit more information on this. And to Eric's point, we do have Steam reviews by language, so we can get a better sense of where this game is falling in terms of nationality. It's not quite what you get on Sensor Tower, but we still have a rough idea of how this is breaking down regionally. Now's the time, I think, to really check this one out now that it's stacking some users together.
All right. Nintendo. PC Gamer picked up a Nintendo investor Q&A, and I actually, so the document was in Japanese, so I translated it, not myself. I translated how to look. There were, Japanese is not that good. There were 18 questions covering the gamut. So it was about accessibility, theme parks, exchange rate, how the yen's affecting sales or versus the dollar, et cetera, et cetera. But what was picked up kind of across the board by news outlets was Nintendo's take on AI. And just context, it was one question of 18. The question was like, how do you feel about AI? And the response was, our company has had the know-how to create optimal gaming experiences for our customers for decades. While we are flexible in responding to technological developments, we would like to continue to deliver value that is unique to us and cannot be created simply by technology alone. In other words, they are not interested in using AI to replace their work right now outside of making.
Hold on. I think this requires some clarification. I thought this was actually a pretty dishonest headline and report from PC Gamer. The comments were like, they were specifically talking about Gen AI. They're not talking about AI in general. And they actually go into detail and talk about, like, look at technology's changing over time. We adapt to new tools. But right now, our superpower is design. And I don't think we're going to need Gen AI. And not only that, like, hey, we're going to reevaluate its decision going forward. It was a far more nuanced, and I would argue less ideological view of what AI is and how they're going to integrate it. They took it as let's not.
That's fair.
Just like
That's
everybody
fair.
takes everything that is written. Everything is black and white. Now you're adding nuances and confusing everybody, Phil. Let's go with black and white.
The headline was like, they were drawing the biggest games company to draw a line on AI, and that's not at all what they did.
So that's the truth, but we're going to review it as Nintendo said that they will not use AI.
Yeah. That is what the headlines are picking up, that Nintendo is saying no to AI. But yes, I agree. It is much more nuanced than that. And okay, so as an exercise, and I agree with
Ship
this.
all of those. Ship all of those. Those are amazing.
I wonder what AI could do to create Elephant Mario from Wonder. So I prompted it and I said, can you create Super Mario in an elephant form using Nintendo style? And this is what I got. So if you're listening to have a quick look at the video, it was very interesting. And I was like, this just proves my point that you have so much to take into account when you want to make specific characters or specific anything in game is not just about an art asset. It's about what the design does, what the product intention is. And all of that is kind of combined into what an artist makes and what we see. So they have to put on more than just an art hat, I think. And so I was like, I could understand why Nintendo might be like adopting certain parts of AI more slowly. But this is the first thing that came to mind. Oh, and I used Midjourney for this.
Those are really cool. But yeah, it's just an ideation tool. Just like I use ChatGPT before writing anything or just summarizing stuff. It's just for ideation. But overall, like when we zoom out, like the AI has basically twofold grand promises. Number one is it allows smaller teams to execute their unique creative vision without being held back by the resource demands. So more unique games entering the market, that's the promise. And large studios can't afford the risks of making much else than sequels these days. So it will make the market bigger and more interesting as these small developers can make bigger games. And the second sort of a grand promise is that the large teams can now make more immersive, like exponentially more immersive games with no matter whether we're talking about AI NPCs or AI UGC or et cetera, et cetera. Now, when we think about like who loves AI, well, of course, execs and investors love AI because you're getting more and better with less. So you put in less resources, you get more and better. That's exactly what any executive and investor is focused on, no matter what business they actually work in. And the founders love AI because you get funded. Slap an AI on everything. If you don't slap an AI on anything, then it will ask you, what will AI do when AI comes? Is your business still relevant? And then when Nintendo takes this sort of an anti-AI stand, which they didn't take, but the news reported that they took an anti-AI stand, it's almost like the Toyota taking the anti-EV stand, which made all the sense, by the way, when you read it, is like why they were anti EV. They were just saying that there's not enough resources in the world, et cetera, et cetera. It was all logical. But nevertheless, the market, the world said, we don't care. Give us an EV. And Toyota, being public company, ended up making EVs. And because they were late, they created the shittiest EVs on the market. And that's kind of the situation. If the Nintendo would be anti-AI and would not invest anything to it, they would be just late coming into the market. So overall, like, if this was truth on short term, this has positive effect on Nintendo, because Nintendo fanboys will rejoice. They are still creating that handcrafted magic. The good PR will continue, because the good PR previously was that they were not laying off people, unlike the American companies. And now they're not using AI, which is also the message that we're not going to lay off the artists, the designers, and anybody, juniors, etc. And that kind of creates more of that positive news. But everyone who works in games really knows that Nintendo is about as kind as Apple in terms of a partner. So there's that. But overall, kind of like summarizing and going away from the original point, is there's two cases. There's the bull case and the bear case for AI. Now, the bull case is that AI will supercharge indie developers, allowing them to challenge large incumbents, the AAA developers, by removing production constraints, albeit the marketing constraints will remain. And then there's the bear case, that the market will be flooded with low-quality throwaway games, almost like a hyper-casualization of the market. This, in turn, would give more power to quality developers like Nintendo that hold IPs, while killing the indie scene with a flood of copycat products. Because the moment somebody gets something good, UGC AI will quickly generate, and you'll have a copycat game, and they will just outmarket you and so forth. So I'm personally inclined to have the same sentiment that Mitch and Blake from Gamecraft podcast had, which is more on the bear case, and kind of looking at the pitches where everybody's using AI, even that Finnish company that was just, like, hey, you can make AI games really quickly with just text, and we can quickly create, and that's the whole thing. I think that is most dangerous for companies that don't have those same abilities that Nintendo, that core competence of making unique games, as well as the IPs. And they are the ones that can kind of, hold back from AI. So that's my point.
It's been what, like a year and a half since ChatGPT launched. There's still a lot to be settled on what this piece of technology is going to do and where it's going to integrate. I'm still surprised we haven't seen things like AI generated music. Like that to me is one of the big missing pieces. I really thought there'd be a lot more AI generated music. In fact, I hear almost nothing about this. I thought we'd see more AI generated novels. We haven't seen that yet. And again, we're like really early into this. I just think there's a lot of question marks, and everyone's, right now it's a bunch of political points. It's a bunch of political points. Technology has always been advancing. Like, Mishka, you were mentioning earlier, like, hey, look, at executives and VCs love this because, I insert $1 and I get more than $1 out. Like, this has always been what technology does. Like, technology is a labor-saving device, and like the first piece of technology, what is a pulley, pulley system that reduces the amount of labor you need to till the fields. Introducing a plow, like, these are all base forms of technology which are labor-saving devices. And, there's this great piece in economics called the Candlemaker's Petition. It's a satirical piece where they talk about the fact that, if you were a candle maker, you'd want to blot out the sun so you could sell more candles. So there's always this tension of technology introducing these labor-saving devices. And guess what? Jobs change, people change, we change industries, we retool. That happens all the time. There isn't necessarily these huge shifts. They've had one of them, which is the Industrial Revolution, and we got over that pretty quick in terms of retooling. So there's just a lot of panic and uncertainty that feels very premature. And again, like, we were talking about King using AI beforehand. With all of these things, I would expect that the first time we start to see AI really take an effect should be more content. It should be more cosmetics in Fortnite. It should be more levels in Candy Crush. I'm confused on why we haven't seen that yet. Because when I worked at DICE, EA had almost a research firm called Seed, which sat below us in Stockholm. I saw the voice generation. We signed voice artists for lifetime rights, and we made generative AI voices. This was way back before ChatGPT, and I kept wondering, like, okay, well, why isn't this in the engine? Why doesn't this stuff exist yet? Animation, in terms of smoothing the amount of frames you need to be able to animate a character. Like, there's all of these really obvious use cases that I could see in front of me, but just don't seem to make it in production, and we haven't felt yet. So I'd love to just see some of this play out a little bit more, for all of us to get a taste of this in production, in a game, in a creative field before the panic sets in.
So on the Nintendo, short-term, no AI, future's uncertain, probably AI. Thanks all for listening. Next week, we're hopefully going to cover even more puzzle games. And I think we'll have the full crew back next week? Maybe
No.
not. No.
See you in August. I'm out.
Okay. Well, have a great holiday,
4-day work
Mishka.
week? How about none?
4-day
none
work
work?
week.
All right. Take care, everyone.
You did it. You made it to the end of the episode. As a fan of the show, it would help us out if you subscribe and leave us a review on the podcast service of your choice. More importantly, are you a member of the Deconstructor of Fun Slack group? If you have 5 years or more of games industry experience, go to deconstructoroffun.com/Slack and apply to join. Join the games industry's best professional community filled with peers always willing to lend a hand. Or subscribe to our newsletter to get all the latest insights from the Deconstructor of Fun content creators. Thanks for listening.